checking for sound. 1, 2, 3.
I must do the same. I'm also checking my sound, Robert, here.
Yeah, I can hear you at least. Oh, so that means you've heard me, so it means we're fine. How's it, bro?
I'm fine anyway.
You okay, man? You are scarce, and since you became DG, you're untouchable. It's difficult to get hold of you. Why
No,
is this
I'm
the case?
easy. I'm easy, particularly to honorable members. You know, I can always jump.
Okay, yeah, sharp.
No, thanks a lot.
You see, Mutivi is right there now at the casa. I think it's a good appointment.
Oh, yes, as chair of ICASA.
Yeah, it's a great appointment. That guy
No,
is
it's
a
a very good
consummate
one.
professional. Yeah.
When is he starting?
Hey, I don't know. Yesterday was that parliament process.
So it was completed.
Yeah, it's completed. It was supported, and yeah, I didn't hear anybody. Well, I didn't hear everything, but obviously the ANC supported, we supported. The DA made a lot of comments, the cautious comments, but they didn't say anything about rejecting or objecting. So I think
Oh,
they
that's
just
good.
don't want to say they support, but I don't think they are against.
No, he's the right man for the job.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know, it's come a full cycle.
Yes, yes, yes. No,
I
it's
mean,
good.
from Mabopane East Technicon to today,
Say again?
I'm saying that from Mabopane East Technicon
Yes.
to today.
Okay, yes. Oh, he comes from there.
Yes.
Say again? Okay, I was
I'm
also
saying
there at
that
some
from
point.
Mabopane East
Yeah,
I was there before
yes.
you, maybe.
Okay, yes. Oh,
Well,
he comes from there.
before me, how can that be?
Yes.
You can't
Say
be
again?
younger than
Okay,
me.
I was
I'm
also
saying
there
that
at
from
some point.
Mabopane East
No, not
I
me.
was there
Yes.
before you, maybe.
Okay, yes. Oh,
Well,
he comes from there.
before me, how can that
Yes.
be?
Oh,
You
Say
can't be
again?
younger than
Okay,
me.
I was
Yes.
also
I'm saying
there
that
at
from
some point.
Mabopane East
Yeah, not
I
me.
was
I
there
think
before
you
you,
went
maybe.
from
Okay,
that name
yes.
to
Oh, he comes from there.
before me. How can that
Yes.
be? You can't
Say
be
again?
younger than
Okay,
me.
I was
Yes.
also
I'm saying
there
that
at
from
some point.
Mabopane East
Yeah, not
I
me.
was
I
there
think
before
Yes.
you,
you
maybe.
went from
Okay,
that name
yes.
to
Oh, he comes from there.
before me. How can that
Yes.
be? You can't
Say
be
again?
younger
No,
than
Okay,
me.
I was
Yes.
also
I'm saying
there.
that from Mabopane East
Yeah, not
I was there.
Yes, yes, yes. No, most definitely. I think let me go and grab my coffee in the meantime.
Morning, colleagues. Is my presentation visible?
Yes, surely it is.
Thank you. Thanks, Calvin. I'll stop sharing now.
Recording in progress.
So, Ashwell, why are we having your face here?
Morning, Honorable Mani. I don't know.
Good morning, honorable members. Welcome to you, those who have already joined on this day, the 1st of March, 2023, to our next committee meeting. And we also welcome our support staff with us and everybody else who has joined from the media and the public in their platforms. We have a meeting to focus on with 3 items that would have been sent to all of you in terms of the agenda, focusing on the highlights of the 3 entities, DPME, States SA, and Brand SA. And probably members would have gone through that. You already know what you want to engage on. I'm not going to be wasting any time. We also want to be as focused as we can to allow some of our members, including the chair, to be able to join some of the plenaries from 10 o'clock. And Honorable Mani has succeeded with that lobby. Ms. Moy, do we have any apologies?
Morning, Chairperson. Morning, honorable members, deputy ministers, colleagues. Yes, Chairperson, we do have 3 apologies. One from Honorable Graham Mare. She'll be with us until 9 o'clock because at 9 she needs to attend to another meeting. Another one from Honorable Minister Marupeni Ramagopa. She's attending the NPC Lekgotla meeting. Honorable Deputy Minister Pinky Kekana. She's attending the International Women's event at the Constitutional Hill. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Moy. Those are the apologies, colleagues. Is there anybody with some difficulty with those apologies before we proceed? Otherwise, I'm ready that we take off immediately. I don't see any hand. Thank you. Honorable Manyi.
Yeah. Thank you, Chairperson. I really have a difficulty when the executive is prioritizing executive commitments over coming to Parliament to account. I think it's a bad sign. This is a Parliament of the people. This is when ministers are counted to South Africa on their responsibilities for them to be busy with their executive roles and so on when these days are scheduled. I think it's bad. I really think, Chair, you should send a strong message to ministers that when they have a date with Parliament, it's sacrosanct. They can't be found in their executive functions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Manyi. It's for that reason that I ask members to comment on those apologies. But I take note of the serious concern you're raising. It's about issues of accountability, but we have received those apologies. We'll have to attend to some of these things as we go on. So your concern is well taken. Thank you. Can we now proceed with that comment and get into the business of our meeting? So the DPME, you don't have a minister. DG, I'm told that you're going to be leading your team and the presentation. I now call upon you to lead that presentation, and you would have shared your presentations with us. It's been taken as read. So I am asking you to take 15 minutes making that presentation in order to allow members to engage with it. Thank you. Over to you, DG.
Okay. Thank you, Chairperson. Good morning to you, honorable members and colleagues. Chair, I'm going to do exactly that and spend the time allocated with the presentation. Colleagues are assisting. Let's go to the first slide, slide 2. Okay, quickly to slide 2. Yes, Chair, as you can see, as we have already read, this is the outline of the presentation. The essence of the presentation is that we are accounting for the work that we did since the start of the current administration to the present moment, which amounts to 4 years. So let's move on to the next one. This is just an overview of how DPME was created. I will not say much about this. Let's move on. And then this is
Recording stopped.
What we previously shared with the honorable members in terms of the mandate of the department.
Recording in progress.
To emphasize in item 4, the intervention part of the work that we do, that as much as we issue reports based on our own audits, we also make interventions. We do intervene where necessary, and I'll highlight on some of the aspects of areas where we intervene as DPME. Let's move on. The vision, mission, and values were previously shared with yourselves. The most important thing is to say that we see DPME as a leader and a catalyst in achieving national development outcomes and impact in society. So this is a regurgitation of what we have shared with yourselves previously. Move on. Most importantly, Chair, all of us are chasing after outcomes. So what we want to see are outcomes, and that is where the tire hit the tar. But as much as we're concerned about outcomes, it's very important that DPME also pays attention to inputs, activities, outputs of government departments, because we can't achieve outcomes without this. And here we indicate the 4 core outcomes of DPME very quickly. 1 is internal to the organization, which is about accountability and transparency. to improve government planning, implementation, monitoring, evaluation, and oversight. This is our responsibility. Improve accountability of the government in the implementation of service delivery programs and projects, and also citizen-facing activities that we undertake together with the other government departments and entities. So when we report, Chair, we are going to report against those outcomes. The priorities are known. The 7 priorities, I will not regurgitate them. Let's move on. This is a mechanism that we use to analyze policies and programs which involve 1, diagnosis, planning, implementation, and monitoring, and of course, evaluation. Let's move on. This very busy slide, Chair, it is important for us as a DPME, as it allows us to analyze critical success factors for programs before they are implemented. And this is the work that we're currently doing as we analyze the APPs that have been submitted to us. Let's move on. Now I move to specific performance issues for the 4 years, starting with 2019-2020, we scored 82%, 2020-2021, 79%, 2021-2022, 80%, 2022-2023, 95%, and we're currently working on the current financial year. Let's move on. And this regurgitate is same, so I will not speak to this. Let's move on. Now, in terms of the performance against the 4 outcomes that I've referred to, first is that we need to improve transparency and accountability. So this area about unqualified audit opinions in essence is about accountability and transparency of the department. So it's not just about chasing a clean audit for the sake. Let's move on. This slide just shows the complexity of the planning system, that there are many plans that we have to take into account when we do the work that we're supposed to do. Let's move on. Now, Chair, in terms of the outcome indicator 2, overall, I need to indicate that we continue to do a lot of work to ensure the institutionalization of planning, monitoring, and evaluation. So just to pick on the first bullet there on your left, development of revised framework for strategic plans and APPs to regulate institutional planning systems. Now, this is in place and is adhered to by the national departments, provincial departments, and a host of state entities. So this has been fully institutionalized. Of course, we continue to attempt to improve this work. Previously, we spoke about the bill that we are championing as a DPMA, which we hope that at some point will be finalized. And also, we have been paying a lot of attention to the amendment to the IGR Framework Act, which is championed by the Department of Cooperative Governance. We believe that this piece of legislation is very important to the work that we do. Then planning and budget alignment is a very big deal in South Africa to ensure that there is alignment between the work that we do and the work that Treasury does. And as part of MTech, the budget committee, we make our inputs and engage with Treasury on the budget. Of course, there is a room for improvement. Let's move on. Then development of national planning instruments and strategy. We are the ones responsible for the development of the MTSF and its revision. At some point in 2022, given the challenges that we're facing, we came up with the National Annual Strategic Plan that was presented to Cabinet. So, Chair, here we're making an attempt to explore a possibility of having an overall government overall strategic plan so that we can guide departments better. We have not continued along this trajectory, but it's something that is always on the radar. We need to go back to this and see if it is possible to always have a strategic plan of the whole of government so that we are coherent and coordinated. Management and coordination of national planning system and alignment. We do this. This is one responsibility that we do on annual basis, and it involves the analysis of APPs to ensure that APPs of departments are in line and are aligned to various policy prescripts. We also bring on board the provinces. There are about 110 provincial departments that we track, and other state entities, as I've already indicated. Let's move on. Institutionalization of spatial planning is a very big deal. Two issues here. We have issued geospatial referencing guidelines to ensure that government departments, when they plan, they must also indicate where, reference where they are going to be rolling out their programs, so that it's easy to monitor and evaluate the implementation of government programs. And then the work that we are doing with DARAD on the National Spatial Development Framework, which was completed, approved by Cabinet, is currently being rolled out. And we intend to assist municipalities, especially vulnerable ones, to have their own spatial development framework. In terms of institutional arrangement, what we have done, Chair, we've created a cohort of institutions as DPMA to ensure that there is coordination within government, and we involve all the entities that I've referred to earlier on, including SALGA and the provinces. So there is some coherence in the way government is beginning to work through these mechanisms that we have created. Let's move on. Then I move to monitoring and evaluation. As you can see here, is an indication of the work that we do when it comes to monitoring and evaluation, that include frontline, citizen-based monitoring, outcomes-based monitoring, monitoring of special projects, monitoring management practices in local government, monitoring management practices in the public sector institutions, and Siahlola program and Izimbizo, which we track together with the Department of Cooperative Governance to ensure that departments respond. Let's move on. So this is the work that we do. We monitor a cohort of interventions. I can just pick on one or two. One is on GBVF. We are very integral in the work that is being done by government and others to implement the National Strategic Plan, even though it's led by the other department in the presidency, but we always support them. The National Food and Nutrition Security Plan, we have been very involved in this area. We've done an analysis of government contribution to national food and nutrition in South Africa. And it turns out that government is obviously the biggest contributor in this particular area. And Operation Pakisa for the economy, and the work that we do to assess management practices in local government. We just concluded an analysis for 29 municipalities, and the results have been shared with the DGs in the governance cluster. Let's move on. And then here we highlight some of the frontline monitoring that we do per priority. So Chair, you will see what we do in priority 2. We are focused on industrial parks and the special economic zones. So 18 sites monitored. We've been paying attention to the situation in Limpopo, Makado, Musina, SEZ, and to an extent Fetahomo, Tubatsi. And in health, we have also done a lot of monitoring and interventions, education. And also in priority 4, we have looked into the issue of SASA and SAPO grant payments. We were part of the resolution of the challenge towards the end of last year when some of the people were not paid. We understand the current issues with respect to this particular area, which is critical for the delivery of the social wage. On spatial integration, a lot of work is being done. Please go back to the previous slide. So we've done a lot there. Social cohesion, we continue to look at different interventions. We have made recommendations. One recommendation, for instance, that we've made here is that the celebration of national days should change, so that it's not just about going to the stadium, but we need to think about an inclusive way of getting everyone to be involved. And in priority 7, we continue to work with other countries with regard to the work of planning, monitoring, and evaluation as indicated. Let's move on. Then it's still on highlights here is the presidential outline. We've seen some improvements. We are currently at around 55% of responses. We continue to engage with the provinces. At some point, we were suggesting to DPSA that this must become a performance issue so that we can ensure that there is compliance and adherence to what needs to be done. Let's move on. We have looked at the transport sector, Chair. This is well known, and in the main, this relates to what is happening in the logistics sector. We are monitoring what is being done in terms of the partnership that government has entered to with the private sector, and some progress being made. You might have seen an announcement yesterday that Sasol and Transnet have entered into some arrangements that will ensure that ammonia is transported where it's supposed to be. Let's move on. We also did some work on the BRTs, the bus rapid transport system in a number of areas, and picked up challenges and success stories. One of the challenges obviously is in Rustenburg, where a lot of money has been spent on infrastructure, but still there are challenges pertaining to the buses will be going there to ensure that whatever money is there should go straight to the buses and no more in investment on infrastructure, part of which we may not need. And of course, certification backlogs in TVET colleges, we've been at the forefront of ensuring that this matter is resolved. And also work in basic education, and that includes also the transfer of the early childhood development. So we have been pioneering on that one. Let's move on. The SASA challenges I referred to, and also on land reform. I must say that while we mention a challenge here, significant strides have been made in land reform. In the current reporting period, government allocated 700,000 parcels of land, 700,000 hectares of land to black farmers. We have been looking at the CPAs in different areas and recommended that we need to change the model of CPAs, because while significant strides have been made by government, but if we force people who used to be in the same area to work together, even if they don't want to do so, then that can present a challenge. So, Chair, standing in front of a successful story, maybe those kind of regulatory issues, and we are trying to work with the department directly to resolve such. Here we mentioned Bakoni, but there are several others that we have dealt with, Kwampwanas in KZN, another dam in KZN, and a cohort of others across the country. Let's move on. Here in evaluations, Chair, in the reporting period, we did 15 evaluations. Now we invite departments to give us the areas that they want us to evaluate, but at the same time, we identify the areas on our own. So the evaluation plan of the departments is a combination of what we get from departments, but also our own. We have prioritized here the evaluation that we've done on public works. We have done an evaluation on the ERRP, Economic Reconstruction Program of government. We've shared the results with Cabinet. They've been adopted. And there are improvement plans that are being implemented by departments. Let's move on. So this is still on the same issues, the kind of evaluations that we have done. The one thing, Chair, that I need to emphasize here is that we've been keeping track of everything that government has done with respect to the COVID pandemic. We have produced country reports, which we, in collaboration with various stakeholders, including academia and research institutions. So we have documented everything for the sake of the future. Let's move on. Then we move on to what we are doing currently, which is the production of the 30-year review. This is at an advanced stage. I've already made reference to the National Food and Nutrition Security Plan that we are taking, and we have made recommendations to involve others. These are some of the things that we are doing with respect to the needs of people living with disabilities, and also operational capital program. Let's move on. So still on this outcome statement 4, This is the work that the NPC has done. Chair, there will be a presentation that is coming from the NPC on some of the things that they've done. In fact, I think this is going to, no, it's not to this committee, but it's going to the SLAB committee because the NPC has already presented to this committee in terms of what we are doing. And we also work with different stakeholders to improve the planning, monitoring, and evaluation system of government. We work with an organization called South African Monitoring and Evaluation Association and several others. Let's move on. Then ad hoc interventions, we presented this to the committee, so I will not go into this. But safe to say that from time to time, we always intervene as DPME whenever there are challenges. And initially, we focus on the vaccine rollout, as you see in this slide. Let's move on. We also monitored interventions that took place post the unrest of
please go towards wrapping up.
Okay, thank you, Chairperson. So this we have presented previously. I will not go to this disaster. Let's move on. Budget allocation, which is the last item for me, Chair. As you can see that in 2018-19, we had close to $1 billion, and then it started to decrease to an extent that at present, we are at around 465 million. So there's been serious decline in terms of the allocated budget for DPME, with severe implications on the extent to which we can do what we're supposed to do next. This is the same information. There are challenges that we encounter, and we shared some of them previously. Some relate to internal systems. We mentioned the issue of CETA. We mentioned the current engagement that we have with the Auditor General to ensure that departments are not planning for compliance, and there is progress in that space. Next. So, Chair, in conclusion, this concludes our 15 minutes, and one can simply say that given the resources at our disposal, we have done what we needed to do. We have already started to look into the next planning cycle, doing research, and also preparing to do our own monitoring of what happens during the election period. That concludes our 15 minutes, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, DG Ngona. Honorable members, let me now invite you to make your contributions to the presentation. You would have taken notes, Honorable Pillay, Honorable Mani, Honorable Graham, in that order. Honorable Pillay, over
Okay, Chair, me too. I'm unable to raise a hand. My apologies, Mutapo.
Okay, Honorable Mutapo will come in after Honorable Graham. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson, and good morning to all honorable members, colleagues on the platform. Let me apologize for my video this morning. I have a very bad bandwidth. Chair, let me first welcome and note the presentation and report. I think it's important for us as this committee to acknowledge the good work that has been done. And we appreciate all of the efforts that have been made by DPME. Just a few concerns that I want to raise. The first one is, has there been any sort of study, well, I wouldn't say study, but have they zoomed into municipalities, particularly that are having water crisis? If they have, what has been the results of that? If they haven't, when do they intend to do so? Because it is something that is facing our citizens, and I think it's important for us to be able to provide some kind of intervention. The second one is in respect of NSFAS. I remember and I recall that there was a presentation that did speak to NSFAS, and there was going to be a visit to NSFAS, and I would just like to know what was achieved from that. what are the linkages of the policy framework for integrated planning and development planning framework bill? Is the implementation of the policy framework being able to provide the draft bill with areas for improvement? Are there consequence management mechanisms for departments tabling unapproved strategic plans by the DPME to the legislatures? And how does the reports developed through the frontline monitoring and supports filter into the relevant departments with the aim of improving performance? And then lastly, I did not hear any mention of the district development model. What is the link there? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Pillay. Honorable Manyi.
Yeah, thank you, Chairperson. Firstly, I must also welcome the presentation. I think it's clear and all. And I must commend the DG that I think it's an improvement from the last conversation we've had. But I would not be honest if I said it had hit the sweet spot. No, it hasn't. I think we've hit the target, but we've missed the spot. And what is the spot? Yeah, let me explain that.
Please don't disturb Honorable Manyi.
Yes,
Honorable Manyi. Honorable Tobias.
He wants to get me off.
Sorry, Chair.
Yeah. So, Chairperson, this department that we explained last time, and I think there's been some improvement into this direction. This department is about monitoring and evaluating the rest of the other government departments. What we've heard here today are two things. One, we've just heard the state of readiness of this department over the past 5 years. And indeed, I think on that part, the state of readiness is good from what has been said. But what I did not, and then I've also heard that the department was very busy with the various other departments and checking and whatever. And what got me even worried is that they even make their own interventions. I have a problem with that. Because if you are supposed to be the one that is monitoring and evaluating, and then you start making your own interventions, who is then going to monitor your own interventions as to how successful they were and all of that? This department, in my view, is like an audit department. It's there to check how government is performing. And the report that we should get here today, like we said last time, should be twofold. There should be, and I think now that the new year is starting, DG, 30% can be about yourself, your 82% performance yourself as to how your systems are in place to do your work. I'm happy with 30%. 70% you should be giving us, because it's not good for you to say there's all kinds of reports, but you don't even table the summary of those reports here. We're sitting here in this country with the government departments that you should be monitoring that are just hitting misses all the time. I mean, if we're sitting today, DG, with a youth unemployment of like 60%, if we're sitting with people that are in grants that are like 28 million, we're actually moving fast towards a nanny state. If we're sitting with uncontrollable load shedding, there's a problem. If we're sitting with uncontrollable irregular expenditures in these government departments, where are you? If we're sitting with an increased number of municipalities that are under administration, where are you? If we're sitting with such targets being missed on inequality, where are you? You see, so you need to be an unpopular department, DG. You need to be that department that's going to say, this department is letting us down. This department is doing good. I mean, this morning I just see some screaming headlines of Minister Patel, for instance, who has to be taken to court to drive transformation. Why is that? Why is Minister Patel requiring to be taken to court to drive transformation when transformation is the policy of this government? Where are you? Why did you even call Minister Patel and try to understand that? Why do you need to be taken to court for transformation issues? You see, so for me, Chairperson, this is what I'm interested in. And I want to say to the DG, maybe what we could do, DG, please prepare a slide at the next presentation. Prepare a slide with all the departments, with red, green, what you call it, green, amber, red robot system. Then you show us that this department is on green. Then it's okay, there's some hope there. This department is on red. When you do that, you then give Parliament some kind of leverage to say, department so-and-so, in terms of the DPME, you are lacking here and here and here and here. But with what you've just said now, you don't give us any to do as the members of Parliament, and we want to assist you. So I'm saying give us ammunition. On your slide 25, this is exactly the issue there on slide 25. Look at that child that you found there. This is the state of South Africa. It's summarized by that child that is in that thing. But you don't tell us where is that child. I'm interested to hear, as we speak here and now, where is that child that is sitting near the rail lines? Or did you just take a pic and move on? What happened to that child? That is somebody's child. That is a human being. What did you do with that child that was sleeping there? I'm interested to know, as we speak, where is that child? On slide 26, you talk about tracking performance. It's one sentence, tracking performance, but you don't show us this performance that they're tracking. I don't know. I mean, out of this discussion here today, I'm not going to know which department is doing good, which department is doing bad, and yet we've got an audit department here by way of DPME that is supposed to be monitoring these performances of these various departments. So DG, I think for me, that's just the one missing element. But for the rest of the other things, I must congratulate you that you're doing well. And I can see that the state of the department, your machinery is in place. All of these things are in place. And I want to caution you against interventions because we're now going to need another department to measure the impact of your intervention. So my view is that if you have areas that require whatever, write a report, raise them. The people that must do the job must do the job. You can't be there intervening and doing the job for them. Then you must measure if they have done the recommendations. Make strong recommendations, don't intervene. Make strong recommendations and let them do the work, not you. I think, let me stop there, Chairperson. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Mani, for your contributions. Honorable Graham.
Good morning, Chairperson. If it's okay with you, I'm not going to put my video on. Chairperson, thank you very much to the department for the report. It's nice to see what has been achieved over the last few years. There are just a couple of things that I'd like to raise. First of all, the Department of Planning, Monitoring and Evaluation, your website is completely outdated. The last reports on most items are anywhere between 2014 and 2017. For example, if you go onto the presidential hotline, and there's key focus areas that are listed on the website that speak to the programs that you're involved in. Some of those are even outdated because I don't think those remain key focus areas, and that I think you've got new key focus areas that you've raised in this meeting. But that website is completely outdated. You can't find any of the latest reports. And I think that speaks to what Honorable Mani was saying. You know, it's all great that there are all these reports that keep being done, and you record them in your APPs and you record them in your annual financials, and you say these reports were done and we met these targets. Those reports are nowhere to be found, because the website is so completely outdated, you can't get any information off the website. So I think that's something critical that needs to be looked at by the department, because it should be a central repository of information about the planning, monitoring and evaluation that's being done in government. And there is absolutely nothing available on it. For example, the 10-year assessment that was done on the National Development Plan, that's not anywhere on the website that's sort of, easily accessible. So these are definitely things that I think need to be looked at. So your COVID interventions were great, but it's concerning that seems to still be a major focus of what we're talking about as a government. This was some time ago, and our major focuses should have shifted, even though I know this is a highlight reel. I do think that a lot of time is spent by this department on getting reports and feedback and more reports and plans, but there doesn't seem to be any record of what these interventions, what these plans do, whether or not they're being implemented, whether or not they're yielding results. So, when you look at your annual financial statements, and it says there were 2 plans that were commissioned for the year, we met our target. Well, that's great. So planning is only one of the 3 things that you're involved in. What happens to the monitoring and evaluation phases of those plans? And then with respect to the SASSA interventions, thank you very much. As the DG knows, that was a huge concern for me, because we had a huge problem with people not being able to get their stipends for about 3 months when post offices in our areas closed. And that is, to me, the sort of intervention that the DPME should be doing in terms of bringing government departments together, not so much as an intervention, but as a sort of monitoring part of their mandate, in saying, okay, we've identified that this is a major issue. How do we resolve it? How do we bring in the three spheres of government, get everybody talking, and get something resolved? So I do think that while they shouldn't be actively intervening, there should be some sort of overarching idea of what's going on in government and being able to put the right people together to resolve problems. My concern again was that there was no communication on that SASSA issue. So while there was an intervention, the president asked for there to be an intervention, a lot was achieved around that. There was no communication to say that we are busy doing that. So everybody was left in the dark. I had people sitting outside post offices that they had traveled to 50 kilometers away to try and get their stipends. They couldn't get home because they'd used the last of their money to get to those post offices, and the post offices didn't have money for them. So there was no communication from government in a major crisis. So I think that's something that does have to be addressed. If this department is busy dealing with a major issue like that, we need to be advised that this is what they're doing and this is how they're trying to resolve it, so that particularly those of us who are on the ground are able to communicate it. And then my other concern is that so many of the excuses that are given for failing to meet objectives or failing to do things or challenges or whatever is resources. We're under-resourced, we don't have enough staff, etc., etc. But if you look at your financials, your vacancy rate was only 8%. That's one of the lowest that I've seen in any of the departments. So to me, your staffing, you're not under-resourced in terms of staff, maybe you're just under-resourced in terms of where you're putting your staff. So it's a deep concern that at an 8% vacancy rate, you're still using lack of resources as a possible excuse for not meeting your objectives. So those are just my inputs, Chair. I really appreciate the opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Graham. Honorable Mutapo.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson, colleague DG, and your team. Let me follow my colleagues in commending DG and the department for the presentation. Honorable Chairperson, despite all odds, budget cuts and so forth, the department at least managed to perform so well. Now, I only have a few questions, Honorable Chair, particularly in relation to, because Honorable Play has touched the issue of development planning framework bill, integrated development bill, and the DDM and the linkage thereof. The second one will be the land reform, Chairperson, because it appears here the Department of Rural Development is moving at a very, very snail pace. I propose that the same manner in which the department, DPME, intervened in terms of the SASSA issue, I request that even here in doing their monitoring, they apply the same modus operandi. That's my humble plea, Chairperson. And also, other issues I think have been attended to. But on the issue of, again, when coming to Department of Health, I would like to also request the department, especially in remote rural areas to do proper monitoring in terms of our communities in accessing, although there are such facilities in rural areas. In each and every village, I can see our government has tried in putting up health facilities in the form of clinics and health centers. So I will request that in monitoring, they check the security part, because the poor health workers, especially the female nurses who are working 24 hours in providing services to our communities, they are at risk. So I'll request that that matter also be looked into. But generally, the report is very much promising. You can see there is light at the end of the tunnel. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Mutapo. DG, can you quickly respond to those issues that need response from the members, and then I will summarize.
Okay, thank you, Chairperson. I'll be quick, and if there are one or two issues, I'll call on the DDGs to come to the party. Honorable Pillay, in terms of the water crisis, what we have done, we have tracked 29 municipalities that are facing severe challenges, not only in terms of water, but also in terms of other basic services, water being one of them. So we have done that. We have a report that we have completed in terms of what is happening in those municipalities. Previously, our report was our monitoring on this area of local government and water focus on the state of the water boards that are facing serious risk because they are not being paid by the municipalities. So that was one area of focus, and we've made quite a lot of recommendations that may include even the funding formula for the water boards. So that was the work that we were doing in the last 3 years. Now we have looked at, as I indicate, there is a report of 29 municipalities that we have been taking, and water is one of them. We did go to NSFAS. We did our own analysis of the situation at NSFAS, and our view is that things have to change. We have to change the way we deliver the product, and also innovation around IT was identified by ourselves. We also visited the University of Mpumalanga as one of the case studies to see what happens when students return. And we have a sense of what is happening at varsities. Now, Chair, on NSFAS, we then recommended that for now, let's deal with the present, to sort out the situation as students return to varsity. But post that, there is a need now to rethink the whole entire system, and we can provide a detailed presentation on what we have seen. We are working on implementing the policy, even in the absence of the bill. The mechanisms that we have put in place are working, in that departments know when to submit reports, to submit draft APPs to us, but that will have to be strengthened by the bill, as we said previously. Now, on the APPs, Chair, we indicated previously when we engaged with yourselves that we make recommendations, but the final recommendations that we make are left to ministers to decide whether to incorporate our views or not, because the final APPs that come to Parliament don't go through DPME. So ministers and DGs can decide whether to comply with what we have recommended. So, Chair, let me indicate that we just finished a report, which we understand will be coming to yourself, a very long report detailing what our analysis of the APPs of 110 provincial departments, all national departments, constitutional entities, and others that we monitor as DPME. So we will request, Chair, that at the opportune time, we be allowed to present on that, even to the other committees. On the district development in model, my apology that it was not mentioned, but let me indicate that one thing that we identified recently is that the economic cluster departments are not participating in the DDM. And what we've done as the DPME through me, we have returned to the cluster to have a special meeting to discuss the district development model to ensure that that cluster is also involved. So we are making such interventions. Now, Honorable Mani, in terms of the interventions that we made, let me quickly give one intervention on the National Health Insurance. After the passing of the bill, DPME convened a meeting attended by DPSA, Police, Treasury, and the purpose of that meeting was to ensure that there is alignment within a government when it comes to the implementation of the NHIE bill or act as after it has been signed by the president. Because in that engagement, we then realized that the police had not been engaged even when we have been working on the bill, to an extent that they were unsure whether PolMed, which is their medical aid scheme, will be incorporated into the NHI. So those are the kind of interventions, particularly where you find that two or more departments are involved. DPMA is just a catalyst, as we say in our vision. We convene a meeting, get everyone together, and then allow them to run. Now, when we present here, Chair, as we indicated previously, everything that we say here amount to a separate presentation. And we are always willing to come back to present on a dedicated report. So when I speak here, I would say that we have done an analysis of APPs, but that on its own is a presentation that will have to be done to Parliament. So yes, we are willing to come back and present. We take the point around the dashboard that Honorable Mani is talking about. In fact, when we present on the APP analysis, we will do so. When we present on the HOD assessments, we will do so and show a dashboard of the state of compliance. I'll ask one colleague, Ms. Intlapo, to talk about the child, if ever we can do that. And then quickly on Honorable Graham, I know you and I communicated on the issue of the payment of SASSA grants, the challenges at the post office. And I need to say that we went even to an extent of presenting before the president the same issues, our own assessment of those challenges in the presence of Minister Zulu and Minister Gungubele. And we told the story as it was then in front of the president and the issues were then eventually attended to. I take a point around communication. Then we're still talking about COVID insofar as it concerns the tracking of what has happened, because some of the impact will not be felt at the same time, but may need some lead time. So that's what we do. But point is that we have produced two reports that are available, and I'll make sure that they are sent to honorable members. I've taken the issue around the website. I know it's not the first time it's been mentioned. So I take responsibility that I've not checked it last time when it was mentioned that it was not updated. So I do that. Then on the work of DARAD with regard to land reforms, we indicate here that we have, as government, given 700,000 hectares during this performance period. In our assessment, Chair, the budget cuts have also been severe in this particular area, to an extent that the support to the farmers who have been given land has been in decline. And I also mentioned the issue around the communal property associations. We have gone to the Zebediel Citrus Farm, which was the biggest producer of oranges in the Southern Hemisphere, which is all but collapsed, and we've dealt with that. So in conclusion, the security matter that has been raised, Chair, we have taken that into consideration, the security of public's frontline staff in different areas. The only question that I've not answered is about the child, and if we need to answer that, I'll ask Ms. Josephina Hlophe to quickly deal with that. Thank you.
And very briefly, because I think I'm not happy with the time taken. Members took 20 minutes, all of them together, and these meetings are meant for us to have more time, and you listen more than you spend more time talking to us. Ms. Hlophe, quick.
Very quickly, it's like a good morning, honorables. The Transnet was called to find out what has happened. Why is it possible for a child to fall asleep on the rail tracks? And the child was discovered by a monitoring team from a DPME as we were monitoring the tracks. Transnet told us that unfortunately they try very hard to put up fences and other ways of preventing such from happening, but communities still the fences, and we strongly encourage them to have a methodology of ensuring that when it happens, it is immediately dealt with. We called a Department of Social Development, and they brought a social worker, and we left when the case was being dealt with by a social worker. The child's background was explained to us and so on, but basically the child is in a safe space as we speak. Thank you, thank you, honorable members.
Thank you. Ms. Timan.
Thanks, morning, honorables. I thought, let me just clarify the issue that has been raised by Honorable Man in terms of, I think the sense is that we are intervening. Maybe I thought, let me just clarify. I think it is a fact that we can't be everywhere, but our stance, we normally make an analysis for the areas of intervention. So when we've analyzed and then we've seen that maybe that department and that department is not responding, particularly maybe on hotline, on the issues of grants and all that. So we put a team together, colleagues. We have our own intervention plan as DPME. Then we need to make sure that the departments, there's an accountability and we monitor for results. So I thought, let me just clarify in terms of the methodology to say that we do analysis. We have our own intervention plan to say that department and that department is failing on 1, 2, 3, 4, but we make sure that there's accountability and then we monitor, then there are results. So I thought, let me just clarify that element. Thanks, Chair and Honorable.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Timane. Just as we wrap up on this, I think the members clearly have acknowledged and appreciated the work you do. At the same time, they have identified gaps that you still need to focus hard on. And the issue really is you've got to close the gap between what your mandate is and what you do. There's a very big gap between the two, and it's just for all to see. So, for example, it means you need to move beyond being an effective post office on target. In other words, in post office, where you say this letter goes to that address, this one goes to there, and all you do is about how do you rearrange and allocate all of these. And so the mandate of this department in its nature goes beyond just being an effective post office and so on. So you've got to look into that. Quite clearly from what you've presented in the 5 years, there's a lack of evidence of impact assessment research that indicates this has happened because of this has not happened. These are the kind of reasons and so on. So there's still a lot of work that you need to do, let alone the issue of the website that is not live and agile, and how you reposition yourself in terms of personnel, because as indicated, it doesn't seem that the way you've presented it, you have a problem in that regard. And if people read in terms of your vacancy rate. So I hope that we're going to have to come back to this and be more thorough. But thank you very much. We will leave it there for now. Thank you. We step off DPME. We now move on to States SA. Deputy Minister, I'm going to ask you to lead.
Well, thank you so much, Chairperson. Let me take this opportunity to convey my appreciations to the Portfolio Committee on the occasion of this important briefing. We really wish to thank you for the invite and the continued support that we receive from the Portfolio Committee. We are here to present progress that would have been made with the implementation of the strategic plan of Stats SA. Chair, Stats SA tabled a very progressive 5-year strategic plan in March 2020. The start of the 2020-2021 to 2024-2025 planning cycle coincided with the commencement of the national disaster as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. The organization has compiled a midterm review report covering the first 3 years of the planning cycle. The report provides a detailed analysis of the achievements and challenges the organization has faced during this time. We have shared the narrative report with yourself for reference. Stats SA is currently in the 4th year of the implementing strategic direction as crafted in the 2020-21 to 2024-25 strategic plan. Today's presentation, Chair, will not cover the 2023-2024 financial year, as the quarterly reports that still needs to be presented to the committee will focus on the performance of 2023-2024. Chair, the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic stressed the business operating model of the organization to its limit and really forced the organization to innovate at great speed. Chair, the organization responded well during this period and continued to deliver on its core mandate. The Statistician General will touch on the key achievements during this period. During the past 3 years, Stats SA undertook South Africa's fourth population count since the dawn of democracy and the first digital count of the country's first population. Against all odds, including the COVID-19 pandemic, Census 2022 commenced in the February of 2022. The National Population Census is the biggest statistical operation any statistical office undertakes in any country. The enormity of this task is also a major disruptor to the normal business operations of the organization and has stretched the executive team and staff beyond their limits. Chairperson, Stats SA continue to focus on driving legislative reform during the period under review. The efforts during this period has paid off as amendment bill was presented to the National Assembly this past week. Honorable members, notwithstanding these many challenges that we have had to and disruption that the organization have had to face and endure during the period under review, including financial constraints, Stats SA continue to deliver on its core mandate by informing socio-economic planning, monitoring, and decision-making through the provision of accurate, relevant, and timely economic, population, and social statistics. Chair, at this point, let me hand over to the Statistician General to take us through the detail of the report. Thank you so much.
Thank you, TM. SG, you have 15 minutes to take us through the presentation, and hopefully you would not be like DPME and go over. Welcome.
Many thanks, Chairperson. And indeed, let me say that in this presentation, when we conclude on or before 1:15, we will have touched on the strategic overview, organizational performance, key achievements, financial performance, and strategic priorities. Chairperson, when we look at our vision, we have said that we want to improve lives through the data ecosystem. And in this regard, we will transform the production, coordination, and use of statistics through optimization, innovation, and partnerships. And these are the things that we have focused on in terms of aligning what we want to do to make sure that we provide insightful data to the nation. We have an agile operating model. We have an interconnected statistical system and indeed transformed capabilities. Chairperson and honorable members, in the 5 years that we have been talking about, we have been driving legislative reform, a matter that through this portfolio committee has been taken through parliamentary processes for downstream processes. And indeed, we have said that we would sustain and protect the quality of national indicators, regardless of the challenges that we face, including financial challenges, and drive business transformation. We touch on issues. The products of Stats SA measure society, education and skills, unemployment, issues of job creation, health and vital events, all the way to governance, crime, and public safety, not forgetting matters of poverty. On the economy, we deal with economic performance, and I must say that on Tuesday, we are going to release the GDP that will look at the fourth quarter plus the performance of the entire year of 2023. Price stability in the form of PPI, CPI, and indeed financial performance of government and private sector. We look at environment and agriculture all the way to tourism and transport. Now, in terms of organizational performance, in the last 3 years, perhaps the 3 years starting from 2020, 2021 financial year to 2022, 2023, our performance has not been less than 89.5%, having been 90.4% in the year 2020-21. That is the year that we were at the highest levels of COVID. 89.5 2021, 2022, and 93.6 in the year 2022, 2023. Chairperson, I would like to unpack specifically in the areas where we have not achieved. In the year 2021 financial year, 9.6% of the targets were not achieved, while indeed 348 of the targets were achieved, even in the impact of COVID. There are other issues of spending and our HR performance that I will talk to towards the end. Safe to say that we haven't reached 50% of the gender parity, but we have moved from when this leadership take office from about 37% to about 43.6%, and pending funding, we will continue to address this matter. In the year 2021-2022, 10.5% of the targets were not achieved, while in total, 371 targets were achieved. In the year 2022-2023, 6.4 targets were not achieved, and indeed 390 targets had been achieved. And we can see there are movements on particularly women in SMS, where we are now, by then we were sitting at 43.3% from the below 40% where we were sitting. Now, what were the major reasons that impacted on us not to achieve our targets? One is the whole issue of scope change and dependency on external and internal issues, but particularly our biggest challenge of scope change has been on funding. What happens is that we have a 5-year strategy plan, and in this 5-year strategy plan, as and when we put the work program, when there is scope change in funding, we had to scale down, and other issues that we haven't been able to address sufficiently are HR constraints in the form of vacancies not being filled. COVID-19 has had a lingering effect. It had a major impact and a lingering effect in terms of the work that we do as STSA, particularly that most of our surveys, household surveys, require that we visit people and households where they live. They require that we go in. Give an example of a farm. If we arrive at a farmer, we require to go in and meet and talk to the farmer themselves. And if there are other households, say you have a farming land extension of about 12,000 hectares, there may be other households in different parts of the farm. Some of them, especially informal settlements on the farms that are sprouting out and emerging, we have to make sure that we unpack them so that we have a full geographic register. So COVID-19 had a major impact on us. The other issue is the census delays and extensions, which we have reported to this committee and we have spoken many times about. Key achievements in terms of insightful data. I will just touch at a high level, Chairperson. On insightful data, one of the things is that in 2020-2021, 265 of 267 statistical reports and releases were published. One of the things is that while we have those like employment, unemployment rate, and indeed GDP, CPI that we take through to the media releases, there are so many products of STSA that we do not take into media releases. We just release them on the web, Chairperson. But of course, one of the things that we continued doing in the year 2021-2022, other than having 273 of our statistical releases made public, is that we released a rebased and benchmarking estimates of the GDP. In the year 2022-2023, 265 statistical releases went out, but particularly Census 2022, we finalized data collection in May 2022. We had a lot of extensions here, Chair, particularly owing to COVID-19. Some provinces we went into without testing on the ground, but when we concluded on the other provinces, we stayed in the Western Cape much longer because we could not leave any province unattended to. And out of the undercount that we have released, which is sitting at 31.6%, which we were assisted by the conducting the post-enumeration survey. And I need to talk a bit about this issue, Chair, that all the time when we talk about the undercount, it's as if someone has come to catch status say, not making it available. We are the ones that released it because it helps us adjust the population count to give us a true reflection of what the count of the nation is as regards the population. Having said so, Chairperson, on the agile operating model, in the year 2020, all field work was suspended, and we made sure that we suspended the pilot of the census and post-enumeration survey. And indeed, we developed and tested multimodal methodologies on our statistics. 2021-2022, we adopted these multimodal approaches, particularly for the census, and we dealt with the digital navigation of our collection points. In 2022-2023, the CPI went digital and post-enumeration went digital, and the census and the post-enumeration survey data collection were concluded. Now, let us look at interconnected statistical connections or connectedness. One of the things that we talk about is legislative reform, a matter that this committee has been seized with all the way. By the time we concluded 2022-2023, it had gone to cabinet for approval in terms of tabling on the amendment bill in Parliament, a process that this portfolio committee honorable members have led us. But one of the things that we have done is that particularly in this 2022-2023, right at the bottom, we developed and piloted a SASCAF, which is South African Quality Assessment Framework for admin records. That is data that comes from Home Affairs, where you may find that they provide services in terms of making sure people have IDs and the like. But they know how many people went there for IDs, for death certificates. They produce as a byproduct admin records. The Department of Health provides health services to the nation, but they know how many people went with what sicknesses. Those are admin records, but they are not in the area of statistics. Now we have to take these admin records and make sure that we can quality assess them through the South African Quality Assessment, Statistical Quality Assessment Framework. Transformed capabilities all the way from the year 2021, we spoke about issues where we dealt with the technology in the majority of data in developing a business and data architecture. We made sure that in the year 2022-2023, we developed for the post-enumeration system an in-house system. So both for the census chairperson and the post-enumeration survey, the systems that we used for data collection that were digital are in-house developed. We have, of course, adhered a lot to UN principles and guidelines, but our systems are internally developed for statistical operations. Chairperson, I want to go straight to financial performance. In financial performance, one of the things I want to talk particularly in the outer year 2022-2023 at the top, One of the things that we had to do when we had a lot of disruptions on the census, amongst other issues, as I've said, COVID-19, where we went into the field without field tests, particularly in KwaZulu-Natal, that experienced riots in 2021, but in the Western Cape, where we had a lot of challenges of COVID-19. So going into field without testing, one of the things we experienced when we went into field was that there were a lot of challenges, particularly in the Western Cape, and we have taken this parliament and the portfolio committee through what challenges we experienced. We had to stay longer in the field. We could have taken a decision that we wanted to stop the census because we didn't have the money to continue. But we took a decision, we informed National Treasury, we informed our minister at the time that we are going ahead. We cannot sink 3 billion rands worth of a project because there were disruptions like floods, COVID-19, and other issues. So our expenditure went to 127%. We are in the process of taking this matter with National Treasury expenditure review, a process that will be brought to the committee and will be taken through SCOPA for parliamentary processes. But despite, in all the 3 financial years that we are talking about, Chairperson, we had an unqualified audit with matters of emphasis. And indeed, one of the things that we had in 2020, 2021 was uncertainty relating to the future in terms of outcomes and relating to litigation. But particularly in the outer year, it had to do with the fact that we had to spend money we didn't have. That is in the year 2022, 2023. Chairperson, what are the strategic risks that we are seeing? Demands are trumping supplies. So the amount of data that we are providing and the demand that the nation continues to make is that we do not have enough data. Even with our 265 products to 300 products per annum, it's still not enough. There are those that districts and municipalities want them in a customized fashion. But what we do, the census, particularly Census 2022, provides us with a baseline so that we can, one, for our operations for sample surveys, we have a basis over which to sample at a geographic level to make sure that all settlement types are represented in our sample surveys. But it also provides us with a baseline to make sure that we inform the nation going forward with the data that we have released. So one of the things that kept on was raised by Parliament was that when you look at the issue of Stats SA having to have access, and this was in the amendment bill, having to have access to dwelling units or pieces of land in the country. Take, for example, in Soweto, you could have a house standing there, but if you do not know how many backroom houses are there, and you cannot sample on them, some of them being informal and they are not relating to the formal structure that you have, Stats SA will ultimately misinform the nation. No matter how much technology we have, if we cannot talk to the people in those areas, those dwelling units, and they answer our questions, no technology can talk on their behalf. So in this regard, Chairperson, on the supply, one of the things that we are going to come up with is poverty and inequality. We know that the income and expenditure survey, Chairperson, has been last done in 2013, 2014, and the results were in 2015. So for almost a decade, we don't have data on poverty. So the income and expenditure survey, which we concluded last year in November, we started in 2022, we concluded last year in November, is currently in processing, and later this year we'll come up with the results. We will have various thematic reports coming out of the census. The business operating model, Chairperson, we still have a lot of challenges, particularly coming from disruptions of electricity, in the nation. But one of the things that we are doing is to modernize our value chain using these tablets that we use for our statistical value chain, particularly for collections, is that at the time when there's load shedding, by the time electricity works and the towers are working, our data can download while it's for that time that there are disruptions is stored on the gadget. But there are risks. The gadget could be stolen, it could be taken away from field workers, and these things do happen. The high vacancy rate as regards resources is one area that continues to challenge us. In terms of funding, we are negotiating and continuing to engage National Treasury so that we can be funded. But one of the things is that we are speaking to National Treasury and DPSA, Public Service Administration Department, to make sure that they allow us to fill priority positions. We are a statistical agency. Without methodologists, without people to look at national accounts, without people to look at population dynamics and poverty, we will one day trip. Chairperson, for the next 2 years is that we will continue to release the census results to the nation, the release of GDP, regional estimates, and release of income and expenditure survey results. The new weights of the CPI baskets will be made available. The finalizing of the Amendment Act, a matter that we have already dealt with. So, Chairperson, when we said we would deal with the issues that we have started with in the first slide of legislative reform, would protect the quality of national indicators and will drive transformation and change, we meant it. And as regards, this slide says, ndihela kwala. Ndiceda khona apha ngomkhulu umbuliso. And I must say, amaningi now, Chairperson. Thank you very much.
Thank you, SG. There's always time for that slide, regardless. So you always have extra minute. Thank you for that. Honorable members, I want to invite you to engage with the presentation from Stats SA. Are there any takers for the engagement? Honorable Yabo, followed by Honorable Manyi, in that order. Honorable Yabo, over to you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair. Allow me to keep my video off for bandwidth purposes.
Go ahead.
Let me greet yourself, Honorable Chair. Let me greet Deputy Minister on the platform. Let me greet the DPME team from the DG to the team he's with. Let me greet the Statistician General and his team. And the comments I want to make in relation to the presentation, in actual fact, also questions, are that in relation to some of the statistical products or the products that the Statistician General is responsible for, and that he may have also commented about, that you would have a space of about a decade without such products being embarked on. What would be the constraints? What would be the constraints, for example, the poverty survey as he articulated earlier? What would be the constraints that make it difficult to have these surveys on a regular basis? And I think the Census 22 or the censuses taken together have demonstrated that we are on an upward trajectory in terms of the population statistics. And at best, our statistics or our population growth has been recorded over a period of decades. And we have registered growth for these periods of decades to the extent of about 10 million in each period. And I'm saying if you have such growth within a decade, it is safe to assume that perhaps in half a decade, you have a population growth of about 5 million. And I'm using simplistic mathematics. And if you have such, isn't it prudent to have these surveys done so that you are able to track how you are performing in various areas of our society? Poverty being one of the biggest measures, of course, that allows us to track how well we are doing as a government or as a country, because the country is not just government. There are also other social players in the space who assist with the economic pursuits of the country as a whole. And I'm saying, what are the constraints that make it almost impossible for Statistics SA to do these surveys regularly? And by regularly, we could be speaking about every half a decade to keep us on track with tracking the most important things. Also, administrative data. Who is responsible for this administrative data? Who does it belong to? I think my view is that we must have a national statistics record that is also buttressed by administrative data, that is able to be seen on a single dashboard, where you are able to see a Bafuze Yabo who is registered with Home Affairs, who is married or not married, who would have gone to have his health records with ailments X, Y, and Z, his employment records, etc., etc. Because, Chair, my view is that once you have such records, which are possibly able to be truncated per individual, you are then able to have a full appreciation of who you are dealing with in South Africa. And I think if you have this best information, including administrative data, that you must pull from different sources, and it's not located at one central point, it makes it even difficult to be able to track things that are important as far as our population is concerned. And I would then say perhaps there needs to be that conversation around, yes, administrative data belongs to the departments that produce it or that get exposed to it, but there should be a bigger role that Stats SA should play in being able to consolidate all this information and truncate it into one central place, so that if there is a need to extract such information, you should not go to many addresses. You just go to one, and you are able to extract data. And I think even for purposes of national security, if there is a threat that is posed by an individual, you are able to just draw his records or her records from just one central database that is controlled somewhere else. Perhaps there should be some discussion around even the elevation of a central database that is at the level of allowing for state security apparatus to be able to monitor movements around individuals. Obviously, let me give the caveat that with the respect for individual privacy and all of that, but I think it's important that we should have such. And another issue that I want to speak to, how does the Stats SA give access to their products to the general populace? I remember that years ago, I do not know if the case still remains now, years ago, I would have wanted to access a specific product from Stats SA, and getting it from the website, it was almost a nightmare, because you get moved from one pillar to the next just on the website. And there is a portal that used to be there where you have to pay for certain of these products. Is that the case even now? Do general members of the public have to pay for these products to gain access to them? What is the regime now in relation to giving access to these products that the Stats SA puts together? Is it still the same or has it changed? And I think that let me leave it at that as a question. The last thing, Chair, that I want to speak to is has Stats SA, taking from the experience they had now with the census 2022, being able to do a primary forecast on what will the requirements be moving forward, especially now that the National Assembly has processed the bill, and we are hopeful that the National Council of Provinces will concur with the position taken by the National Assembly, and that the President signs the bill into law. I'm making those assumptions. Has there been a forecast on what the new amendments mean cost-wise to Stats SA, and whether we will have Stats SA ready to be able to implement enumeration and some of these surveys within the context of the amendment without having a great financial impact? Is there a forecast being done? And if the forecast has been done or is being conducted, what is the likely outcome in relation to costs of doing an enumeration process in the future? What is the potential cost? We know that Stats SA would have said to conduct census 2022, they would have needed 6 billion. They were only granted 3, and they made the best out of it. In terms of future statistics gathering, what are we looking at? Especially now that they will have access to these premises, they will be able to go to that backyard that the SG was referring to speak to the actual human beings without having that data given to them by a third party. What are we looking at in terms of resources, in terms of the financial requirements, in terms of the logistical requirements of an enumeration process and the production of these surveys? Let me leave it there, Chair. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Yabo. Honorable Manyi.
Yeah, thank you, Chairperson. Firstly, let me welcome the presentations from both the Deputy Minister and the SG. But also, I just want to say to the Deputy Minister that I really want to, what's the right word? I want to appreciate the fact that he is being consistently present in these meetings. And I want to say to him that his presence here, it's not like it's got to do with us being here, respecting us. He's respecting the people of South Africa. So I really want to appreciate that, Minister, just to say that this is exactly what the people of South Africa expect. So please keep up doing that. And also your opening inputs have been on the mark. So I'm happy with what is happening on your space. In terms of the presentation by the SG, the SG is one of the most detailed people, and he's made a detailed presentation here, which I'm really generally happy with everything. And just the one thing, he made a throwaway comment. Sometimes his throwaway comments can distract. He brought back the issue of the amendment bill through his throwaway comment, and I want to talk to it now. That comment that he made about entering dwellings, as it were. And the only point I really want to make the SG is that I don't think it's prudent to posture as if for you to get accurate data that you actually necessarily have to enter each and every house in South Africa. And for you to be saying if you don't enter each and every house in South Africa, therefore the data is not going to be reliable. That even on your best day, you don't enter each and every house. I just want to put on record, the SG, that in my whole life since I've been a South African and I've never left the country, I've never had the pleasure of Stats SA South Africa officials entering any of the premises I've lived in. I've lived in various places in this country. I've lived in Soweto, I've lived in Carltonville, I've lived in the Free State, I've lived everywhere. I've never had that privilege, but that has never meant that the results from Stats SA are necessarily inaccurate because they never got to my house. So the posture that says if you have not entered each and every house impacts on the validity of your stats, I don't think is accurate, SG. And I also just think that this is a matter that actually could have been handled differently. And I'm hoping that through the National Council of Provinces, that you will amend your stance a bit as you go there, and just fine-tune this thing just so that it has groundswell support. We want to support this thing fully, but as we said, even at in National Assembly, that our issue is the safety of the people, because sitting where you are sitting, that there are people that masquerade as you when they are not you. So why are you turning a blind eye on this? And all we are saying is that give the necessary assurances. For what we've said there is that you could have, even in situations where certain places are flagged, you could even have you could have police coming with you, get a warrant. I was even thinking that you should actually have drones, for instance, if need be, because all you're interested in are the numbers and so on. You could even have drones. Maybe we must look into that so that we are able to enter as much as possible and all of that. Nobody would have I wouldn't have a problem with a drone that is certified and everything, just to make sure that the safety of the community is not compromised, because not only it's outsiders that create vulnerability, but even in your own staff, we're not sure about the vetting rigidity or the robustness of the vetting of your officials on all manner of criminality. So I will just leave that one there. But going forward, I wanted to just check two things. One, what are the chances that you could make some submissions to convert make some submissions to upgrade, so to speak, Stats SA into a Chapter 9 institution, because the independence of this department is very crucial for the development of South Africa. There can't be any whiff of suspicion that there's political interference. And I must not be casting any aspersions here. I'm not saying there's any at all. If there was any, I would say so right here. So that must not be the thought. I'm just saying that, you never know. Sometimes people say to us that, oh no, when this constitution was done, we had a Mandela-type president in mind, but then we had different individuals, So we can't pretend that if today there's no political interference, that tomorrow there won't be any. So we need to plan for the worst. So I'm going to suggest to you, SG, that please look into putting processes in place to make this institution independent, truly independent as it should be. And then lastly, I wanted to just check with you whether is there any interaction between Stats SA and IEC? For instance, the issue of dead voters, we get told, especially in the Eastern Cape, that sometimes dead people vote. And you're there to tell us that, no, in this area, so many people are alive in this area. These are the numbers of people, and you can even give IDs of people that are there and all of that. I would be interested to check to know if there's any interaction for you to verify that indeed all the people that are in the registered database of the IEC are indeed really all alive people, as it were, just to make sure that even when on that front, the voter registration is indeed a voter registration of people that are alive. Yeah, I think that's all for me. Thank you very much, Chairperson. But otherwise, I welcome your professional presentation.
Thank you, Honorable Mani. Thank you very much for your contribution. SG, I'm going to come back to you to make your responses to the issues raised, followed by the DM. Over to you, SG.
Thank you indeed, Chairperson. I will start with matters that were raised by Honorable Yabo. In terms of the constraints that make it difficult for us to conduct some surveys, including particularly the poverty, the income and expenditure survey that gives us the poverty data. It's funding. We are funded on project basis. I'll give an example. For the census, we were funded 3 billion as approved by Parliament. If we went to National Treasury and we wanted 6 billion, for example, for the census, National Treasury said, we will give you 3 billion. In census 2011, we were funded 3 billion. Way back, census 1996, 460 million. Census 2001, about 1,960 million. 3 billion 2011. So with the population increasing and the scope increasing, we wanted 6 billion for census 2022, but National Treasury gave us 3 billion. For the income and expenditure survey that helps us fund poverty, in almost every request to National Treasury, and before we were funded, at every portfolio committee where we appeared before we were funded for this poverty, we raised this matter that the lack of funding, particularly for the income and expenditure survey, would make it difficult for us to give the country poverty. That is why we still report way back 2015. We were funded ultimately 300 million for the income and expenditure survey. So being project-based, if we don't get money, we can't do our work. And there is no other agency worldwide or funders who would be willing to fund us as State SA on the work that we do, which is of national importance to the nation. Some funders would have wanted to fund us for their own interests at any given moment, to measure things that would not necessarily help us drive our statistical outputs and national indicators. In terms of admin records, the amendment bill will help us to coordinate with all producers. And indeed, but in terms of the admin records themselves, where we are now, admin records are still very unstructured. A good example is when people come to our houses to connect telephone lines in the old telecom way, and they still do so, where they connect fiber optics these days to connect to our Wi-Fi's and the like. The information they collect, Department of Agriculture cannot use it. Even if they go to a farming unit, even if they go to the village, that information cannot be used because it sits on separate databases. The forms are different. So are the forms that are used at school, at the Department of Health, at Home Affairs. They are different. We have by now succeeded working with the Department of Home Affairs on the death notification form to have it standard in such a way that we are also working with them on the causes of death. That is why we release the causes of death as let's say. There are still forms from the side of police that are not structured. So it will take a bit of time because some of the forms are driven by legislation. It's not a matter that we will succeed overnight, but having SAPS on the crime statistics, national statistics now released by SAPS are official statistics based on their records. Causes of death, as I've already indicated, collected by Home Affairs are official statistics. We will be moving. But one thing on issues like state security and national state threats or national threats, security threats, Stats SA will have limitations because Stats SA cannot be in the space where there will be punitive or incentives. Stats SA has to be independent. If we collect data based on whether there will be punitive actions, then the numbers we make will be doctored by those who give us. If there will be incentives, they will know that there's an incentive for inflating or for deflating the numbers. So we have to remain independent of that space. Having said so, it doesn't mean that data that is collected or is in the remit of Stats SA cannot be demanded. If there's a court order, if the judge says, I need this information, firstly, the people themselves must give us permission to release that information, because every record that comes to Stats SA is never made public with the identifiers. So if the person has written to us, we can release that, but otherwise there has to be an order from the court. In the causes of death, for example, we have records that come from Home Affairs that we are processing. If there's a directive from a court, the police do come and ask for those records. But those records, especially on investigations of matters like rape, murder, and the like, they do come and say, we want this record. They come with the necessary stipulated requirements of court orders. Or Home Affairs, if we haven't touched those records, writes to us formally, because these records would have been in their care. Anyway, we are just processing them. Now, the whole issue of accessing data, we have revamped our website. It's very user-friendly. We can go into whether we want economic data, we want population and social data. We don't sell data. It's collected from the public coffers. We did sell data census 1996, when the results were released in 1998. Data was sold. If people wanted full municipal data between 1998 and 2000, data was sold. But since beginning of 2001, for more than 20 years now, we haven't sold a single item of data that we make available. It's there on our website, but we also are available for user needs. We have a user unit that when users are on our website can go there and say, I require this information, I'm struggling, and we do assist members of the public. In terms of costing of the amendment bill, and this question was raised even during the portfolio committee engagements, that the process of dealing with a bill is very difficult to cost it upfront, because when you have an act, to implement it, you need a strategy plan and a work program. So we cost the work program on annual basis based on what we will do. But one of the things that comes from this comment by Honorable Yabo is that with a need to coordinate data production in our subsequent work programs going forward, we will need to make sure that we raise budgetary requirements that will take us forward in coordination. But in some cases, we will save money, because if we use the South African Quality Assessment Framework, SASCAF, to deal with administrative data that is already collected, and we direct our other stats producers to collect data in a particular way so that it's easier to look at that. But not only that, even they themselves, they can assess their own data online without even coming through us if they need a quality assessment. It would remain a lot more cheaper going forward. Honorable Mani raises issues that have been raised by this portfolio committee on the concerns on accessing pieces of land other than a private dwelling. Certainly, we will not insist on accessing private dwelling, but accessing the land on which they stand. And Honorable Manyi raises a critical point in terms of the safety and security of members of the public, which we as Status say are also concerned about. And indeed, we will do everything possible. One of the things we do when we go to rural areas and farming communities, which are sparsely populated. In rural areas, we go to the traditional leader, senior traditional leader who routes us to their Induna and councillors and members of the civic association and policing forum. So when our field workers are moving around, the policing forum is and the local authorities are aware. In farming communities, we usually greet at the local police station, and in sample surveys, it's easy. In non-sample surveys, they make us work with their security arrangements. Almost all farming communities have security arrangements, neighborhood security watch and companies. In suburbs, we do the same. We do, but it's very difficult in suburbs. And in estate, gated estates, we go and talk to the estate manager, and then we are allowed what times we should be there. So we are doing everything possible in our measures to make sure that we make members of the public comfortable, that those who appear as Status say employees. Of course, criminals will always try and cut corners, and they are always ahead of us. And they do impersonate Status say officials, but we also worry about the safety of our own staff members. There have been cases, documented cases, where our staff members were attacked by members of the public. We are in court now where dogs were set on an employee of Status say by members of the public. So we do these matters that Honorable Manyi is raising. It's a concern not only for Status say, for all of us. And technology, including drones, will assist us. But there are times where technology will not address all our needs. In the previous census, mostly in suburbs, when we asked members to interview them, most of them said they had registered to fill online. But online registration and filling online was the lowest ever response. Even when we followed up, they kept on saying they would fill, and they didn't come back on that. So technology will help us in the long run, and we do appreciate that income. In terms of upgrading Status say into a Chapter 9 institution, certainly way back as 1999 when we got this new act, and indeed in the 2000s, this matter was mooted that it could have been a Chapter 9 in terms of its independence, because as and when Status say is sometimes seen to be going with to be a government department. We are now using, there were times when we were having our own standalone logo. Members of the public said, we don't know you. We went back to a government. Now there are people, when you go to them, when you have this logo emblem, they say, no, we don't want, you are not independent. So these kinds of issues keep on coming. But obviously, Parliament will guide and support this process, because that would require a constitutional change, and that process would be better placed to be handled by Parliament going forward. Lastly, on our relationship with the IEC uses our data that we release on the population from the population census. And indeed, as regards the work that they do, we don't have a mandate to go and ask them or to share with us their records to see if the people that are there are deceased or not. But one of the things that we do, not only for the IEC, for all agencies, we do get asked to come and verify, and Honorable Manyi will remember in the last census, when there were issues raised by political parties, and all political parties had been worried about double voting or something, we were asked to come in as STETS-SA, and we do as such as we are asked to do from time to time. Thank you very much, Chairperson.
Thank you, SG. DM, your quick final remarks.
Oh, no, thank you very much. I'm going to be very quick, Chairperson. I'm not going to be like SG. Well, he takes his time, but he answers difficult questions. One, let me say that I believe that by developing the statistical capacity of organs of the state, we would be able to achieve more. You would remember that there was a case in KZN of an unpaid user who had procured services of STETS-SA to undertake a study on behalf of the provincial government. So I think in the long term, the state would be able to, or government would be able to save a lot of money, given the fact that once that capacity is developed, we will then be able to then upgrade some of these studies into official reports. The other thing is that our biggest concern remains the vacancy rate. It stands at almost 19%. I think it's quite concerning. But given the environment that we are finding ourselves in with respect to our finances, STETS-SA continues to perform despite some of these challenges. I mean, 265 reports in the last financial year is quite commendable. And I think it speaks to the ability and the capacity of STETS-SA to be able to deliver on its mandate. The idea of the Chapter 9 institution, and this is what has been raised by Honorable Mani. Let me convey my appreciation to him for acknowledging the work we are doing. I can assure you, Honorable Mani, that we will remain undeterred and will continue to report to and account to the portfolio committee as and when we are required. But I think the proposal on the Chapter 9 institution is a valid one, because Chapter 9 institutions were established to guard democracy. And I think the independence of STETS-SA also speaks volume about the nature of the institution that STETS-SA should become in the long term. I really think the Statistician General has been able to delve more into the issues raised, and I'm glad that he sufficiently responded to them. Thank you very much.
Thank you, DM, for your participation and contribution and your closing remarks. We're now going to proceed to the next item of the Brand SA. As we do that, I'm going to ask Honorable Phiri to just be a caretaker in the chair whilst I'm dealing with another urgent task. Honorable Phiri, so is going to ask the DM to come and make brief remarks, and thereafter to get a presentation from Brand SA. Thank you. Please take over, Honorable Phiri.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning to yourself. I will be a good caretaker indeed. And honorable members, without me wasting much, and we are aware that today there's mini plenaries that are starting now. I don't want just to take a lot of time. Let me welcome and invite DM Mutaung to lead the team. After you make your remark, then you'll give it to the person who must present the presentation for Brand SA. Honorable Mutaung, over to you.
Good morning, Chair and honorable members of the Portfolio Committee, Chairperson. This engagement marks an important milestone as we have to reflect on the commitments of 6 administration and progress to date, given the fact that we are near to the end of the MTSF. It is important to reflect on the issues in environment at the beginning from this administration. We know that There have been a number of challenges, like, for instance, COVID-19 pandemic that led to a global lockdown in 2020 to 2022. COVID resulted in a number of challenges, which included slow economic growth, high rate of unemployment, while inflation has increased to a 13-year high. This performance period has since unprecedented challenges, both globally and domestically, such as geopolitics, energy security issues, and political instability in some part of the African continent, especially to South Africans. The ongoing challenges of inequality, poverty, corruption, and crime have plagued the nation brand reputation and image. Honorable members, it is pleasing to note interventions made by South African government in a form of Operation Vulindlela, where interventions have been made to improve ease of doing business, plans that have been put in place to improve the energy supply issues, such as diversification of energy supply and transition of a plan, to name a few. It is not all doom and gloom. During these trying times, there are still good and positive stories to tell. South Africa's chairship of the African Union and BRICS afforded the country to lead on matters of economic agenda and Africans' prosperity. It was during South Africa's chairship that our country was applauded by the World Health Organization for its innovation strategies in combating the coronavirus and providing vaccines to the African continent. Closely linked to South Africa's role in advancing the African agenda, it is the significant appointment of the Secretary General of African Continental Free Trade Area, who has done outstandingly well to promote inter-African trade. South Africa has continued to be instrumental in advancing peace, security on the continent. We have truly made it our mission to create a better Africa and a better world. South Africa has done very well in the space of science and technology, exports, creative arts, and sports. For example, for the second time, Rugby World Cup winners, Amapiano, which continues to trend globally, and various other South African trailblazers in the international space like the Ndlovu Choir, Trevor Noah, to name but few. Brand South Africa's role as a nation brand custodian is now more critical than ever before, as we saw the entity conveying a compelling South African story during this period and positively shaping perceptions. The entity swiftly adjusted to find a new way of implementing this very important mandate using online platforms during the COVID lockdown. They did so, achieving most of their targets despite challenges. It is also during this period that the Brand South Africa team moved from unqualified with material findings in 2017 to clean audit with no findings in 2022-2023. Brand South Africa's role was intensified during the period under review in supporting strategic country engagements such as the President's chairship of AU, BRICS, G20, South African Investment Conference, state visits, and World Economic Forum. Such initiatives assist in shaping the narrative and perceptions of the South African nation brand internationally. Important to the success story of the country, it is the ability to bring South Africans along, encouraging them to rally behind the nation brand. Brand South Africa did this extremely well through its program called Play Your Part, a movement created to inspire, celebrate, and empower South Africans to contribute to a positive social change in their respective communities and country at large. While the entity has done well, there are still areas that require focuses and improvement. The period under review also saw the entity grappling with challenges relating to corporate governance. Further to this was an imposed moratorium in 2019 and 2020, which has led to challenges related to the vacancy rate in Brand SA event at the present moment, as the report will show you. It is unfortunate that significant and continuous budget cuts continue to negatively impact the operations of the entity, Chairperson. I wish to assure honorable members that we managed to deal with the issue of appointing or filling all the vacancies of the board. We are currently finalizing the process of registering all members of the board in the master's office. We are hoping to have a fully fledged board that is in operation by March. Chairperson, allow me to request your permission to hand over to the executive team of Brand SA to take us through on the highlights on performance achievements and non-performance achievements for the fourth year. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, DM. You can give it to your presenter. We are ready.
Acting CEO.
Good morning, Chairperson. Good morning, members, honorable members of the Portfolio Committee, as well as the colleagues from other institutions. My name is Thembile Dombela, and I'm the acting CEO at Brand South Africa, as the DM has introduced me. Members, I would actually go to the strategic plan slide purely because the slide 1 all the way to slide 13 provides a synopsis to the lay of the land at Brand South Africa. Those slides speak to the issues of institutional framework and governance, the issues around the legislative prescript governing Brand South Africa, the issues of the board, the mandate, which is a two-pronged mandate, domestic and international. They also cover why we do what we do as a nation brand custodian, essentially looking at why countries compete. And as Brand South Africa, we fall amongst those because we want to win the share of voice. We want to win the investors' wallets. So those slides provide those synopses, and it zones all the way to 11, where it provides a framework that we follow in the space of nation branding, a framework called the Nation Brand Hexagon. It's very important to understand that context because every work that Brand South Africa does aims to impact on each of those hexagon pillars because they are the drivers of perceptions of how investors and people globally sees each country's based on perception. So without further ado, I'm going to proceed then to the strategic plan and go to the review period, as we've said. I won't touch on the vision and the mission, but what is important is the alignment of Brand South Africa's strategy to the national priorities. So at the root of this strategy, which we call our house, is the 5-year NDP implementation plan. It is the MTSF. It is the 6 administration's priorities. We've also looked at the chapters that are synonymous with what we do from an NDP perspective, which is positioning South Africa in the world and transforming society and uniting the country. Also articulated in the SONA priorities. Our work that we do seeks to contribute or showcase how South Africa's role contributes towards a better Africa and a better world. Equally important is how we position this country as a desirable investment destination, looking at the ER&R and the trends in the nation brand space, because we are competing amongst other giant brands, your brand India's, your brand US, your brand Australia. So we have to understand also what is it that they are doing so that we can beat them at their game. So those are the aspects essentially that is at the foundation and informs our 5-year strategic plan. And if you really look towards your right in terms of why do we do what we do the work that we do so that we can contribute towards the 2 impact statement that we articulated in the year 1 of this current administration. We said Brand South Africa will play an important role in contributing towards a prosperous nation brand. We also said Brand South Africa will contribute towards a patriotic and a socially cohesive nation. We move along then to see if really then what have we done thus far. So year 1, we painted this picture of our outcomes, which are 4 outcomes as per our APP, and they have their indicators. We then put on baselines as at 2019 to say this is where the destination will be in the next 5 years when we look into March. And we're saying we are working towards 47%, for instance. When we look at the understanding of the nation brand, is the global community understanding us? And do they know what we mean and what we stand for, essentially? Then you look at the 1.2, which is speaking to our ability to mobilize South Africans, departments, NGOs, business to rally behind the brand and wear and live and align themselves to the nation brand. Improving the reputation of the entity itself, again, is one of our key outcome indicators. We did not have a baseline at the time, but we knew that at least we must be somewhere within the region of 60 in the next 5 years. We must work hard. And lastly, which is very important, because you cannot build a brand only focusing externally. You also have to get your people and bring them along and get them to rally behind the brand, which is why we have a Play Your Part program that our Deputy Minister has touched on. It's very imperative. It's us basically playing our part in saying, South Africans, stand up, do your good, and contribute towards a positive social change in our country. We also measure active citizenship as well as the awareness of our expats, the South Africans living abroad, but they are part of our program as Brand South Africa. Halfway through this 5th administration, we've had to look at ourselves and challenge ourselves to see, are we on the right track or not? And as you would see, on the first outcome, improved reputation of Brand South Africa as an entity, we're looking at that baseline. And then if you look at the amendments, which we also submitted, was to say that a baseline study will be conducted, which will give us a benchmark in terms of the baseline, in terms of the disposition of Brand South Africa amongst its stakeholders. And we are busy with this current quarter. That is why I'd like to assure the honorable members that this work is going to be done. The understanding of a nation brand, as you would have seen from the previous slide, we had a baseline of 37. We are working towards 47 in the 5th year. But to our surprise, based on the work that we've been doing, particularly we're coming from the Dubai Expo, the awareness, the association, the reputation profile, and understanding who South Africa is has jumped to 67%. We discovered this at the mid-term period, and we decided then to even stretch the targets for ourselves because we've already exceeded the 5-year target. So we are on track if you look at the status. The levels of Play Your Part awareness program, which is the program that takes care of the tone and the behavior at home. That one, we had at 40% when we did year 1. And we said, if we're at 40, let's work towards the next 5 years to move the bar to 44. Due to reprioritization of our mandate to focus more internationally, it also meant the budget had to be channeled more internationally. And as such, the awareness took a knock because we are no longer anymore on TV. We were no longer on radio with Play Your Part. We just solely relied to be on the ground. That is why to date, with the awareness levels, we are sitting at just 20%. But the team is working tirelessly to try and bring that back through our partnerships, focusing largely on the community radio stations as well as the African language stations. The same is true with the active citizenship. It's on track. We set a target of 60 and we said we want 65. Currently, we are on track because we are sitting at about 62. The same is true with the GSAs, where we've said we did not have a baseline. Subsequently, we launched the portal that communicates to South Africans in various countries such as Australia, New Zealand, in the African continent. So we have a baseline now of 699 at a mid-year term. And now we still have another year. We can push the bar, and we already are tracking very well on that one. The last one, again, speaks to the number of people that are engaging with Brand South Africa's content online. It's very important. People are now very much active online, and their target was 500. Currently, we are actually sitting at 8,500 because of our collaborations with academic institutions, because of our training program in various government institutions. We are getting people now, they are enrolling and they are using our images, they are using our adverts when they go abroad. Performance summary. This is a synopsis of the 2019 up until the current 2023-24. It's pleasing to note that it's actually a positive direction that is going upwards from a 72% and now going into the 90s. And it is pleasing to note that 23-24 fiscal performance was around 95%. Dicing it down further, it will include targets. The targets per each of the annual year. And really the point to take note, honorable members, here is that, yes, there were targets that were not met, and I would briefly explain what the plan is to deal with those. Secondly, the targets, as you see, they seem to be fluctuating. There was a time when we were advised by DPME to condense our targets. They were too scattered. So we would have one line that speaks to promoting the brand domestic, and then have another line international, and another line in the continent. And we decided, hang on, we don't need 3 lines. We actually can lump this in one line. So we did that. That is why you see the difference in terms of the target numbers. So what are we going to do with the targets that are not met? The BBBEE score work is currently underway because we are non-compliant at this stage as an entity. There is a trust, but we are working with our player part ambassadors. We are working with our procurement plans, SCM team, to ensure that we improve certain scores, and how we recruit as well will contribute. So it's a consortium of things that we are looking at to make sure that we deal with this intervention and we address the shortfall. As the DM has rightfully said, we were given a recruitment we were given approval to proceed with recruitment last year. And what we have done thus far, because really the organization was in a dire state, we filled certain positions. The only positions that we have not filled are those positions that requires board participation. For instance, recruitment of the CEO, recruitment of ExCo members such as the Chief Marketing Officer, the CFO, as well as the corporate service directors. Those, as we get the board in March, we have given ourselves enough period. We are working towards July to have everything filled at Brand SA. So still within this time frame of a 5-year administration that we have, the 6th, what we will do is we'll make sure that we fix these shortfalls. Now, looking at where we are at as we now this year, this current period, as I'm reporting to the portfolio committee members, I'm just going to briefly touch on this. On track, already met. So there's nothing to worry about on the target. We've already met it. The second one, it's already met. The third one, it's on track. As I've said, the Play Your Part program, whilst the awareness numbers have dropped, the Play Your Part ambassadors, we call them soldiers on the ground that are doing great things. So these are ordinary people that are doing amazing work in their community, and those that are flying the South African flag through their various spheres. We've seen an increase in this number. In 2019, we were sitting at about 120 ambassadors. We are sitting almost close to 400 Play Your Part ambassadors. So it tells you that even though we are not on TV, the appetite of South Africans that want to contribute to a positive social change is growing. And I think that is important to note for an entity such as Brand SA. The active citizenship, as I said, currently at 62, we are on track truly, as well as with the global South Africans. Finance, quickly looking at the synopsis of finance, this is the trend. I provide a trend to provide a context that coming from 2019, we had a nice budget. the mandate is very, very big for us, but we continue to do with what we have and make sure that we create the impact. And now what is challenging the entity is the drop in budget, because if you look at the 24-25 period and 23-24, the budget fluctuated. In 21-22, it was as a result of COVID here. But here then it came back. Now it has gone on a slip, it's going down on a slippery slope with the 42 million budget cut. And yet the high cost of doing business is there. The realities of the volatility of a rand is there. It simply means we just have to, box cleverly this time around as we go to the next year. The DM has also touched on our performance given the audit outcomes over the years. Moving from unqualified all the way to qualified audit is also a great achievement for us. And then members of the portfolio committee, I'd really like to just highlight some of these achievements. I won't go much into detail. It's really to assure you that the work that we do speaks to the issues of the national priorities. So the areas that need attention, I've touched on the vacancy rate. We are working on that. We are working on the triple BEE. The greens I won't touch because they speak to the issues that where we are doing right, essentially. And then on the second outcome, as elaborated, definitely we have a lot of greens. The challenges, we are working on those challenges. For instance, it's very tough. We've concluded the positioning presentation of South Africa. Right now, we are implementing that aggressively. Why do we do that? It's because we are facing certain challenges that are denting our image. And we can't fold our hands and say there's nothing we can do. We fight, even we are facing those odds. From a domestic perspective, as I've said, getting more people, that's our challenge. Getting more people to partner in kind and even financially contribute towards our initiative is very key. We've started picking up our support from people that I would like to recognize with the honorable members, because the question has been asked in the past, how is your relationship with the private sector? I think we are doing a good job. It can get better. There's a room to improve. But we've had South African breweries, even this year, coming with us, contributing financially to WEF Davos. We've had NASPAS, we've had Anglo, American, Old Mutual, Absa, Standard Bank, and MultiChoice. Those are the people that have supported us one way or the other to give us a muscle to be able to execute our mandate. Whilst we have these financial pressures, at least if we need to do more of that, where our focus will be in this last year of this administration. And then if you look at active citizenship and social cohesion, we are fixing play your part. How are we doing that? We are working with soldiers on the ground, penetrating the rural communities, because we don't want them to be left behind. Part of the play your part program is to empower them. And we are doing that. Just yesterday, we were onboarding some of our colleagues, some of our ambassadors from the Eastern Cape. And I did say they look at the African Teen Initiative, which is a book initiative, very great initiative. But through her, we've been able to access a network of other people that are keen to join us. We are even on their community newspapers such as Pondoland, and we did not pay for it, but it just goes to show how we demonstrate that when we work with these soldiers on the ground, they use their platform and their media, and we get a mentioning as play your part, because we don't have money to go and initiate a new ad on TV. That is our guerrilla strategy in working using bottom-up approach. So the play your part strategy currently is being refined to address, as I've said, and make sure that we are all there as citizens rallying behind the brand. It's a show and tell. I won't dwell much. WEF Davos, where we've had, as I've spoken about, the partners as well as even the government supporting us, the ministers. This one, again, speaks to the initiatives that we do in China, because we've got a China country head that is really instrumental in positioning South Africa as well as in the UK. So these are global market initiatives. This is what happens on our digital platform, our own, as well as the one that we pay when we buy for space. And we profile our South Africans. We profile what makes us great, what makes us inspiring as a country. Supporting the presidential's country investment is also at our drive, is also at our core, where we came up with a strategy growing with South Africa. And we showcase number of companies that have been investing in South Africa and continue to invest in South Africa. And our job is to tell the story of why do they continue to invest in South Africa. We are not leaving our people. Our job is to also tell South Africans, what does it mean to be South African? This is who we are is a campaign which was on radio, was on TV, and we're really talking about the story of what makes us great, what makes us inspiring. And it says our values touch on Ubuntu, it touches on our hard working, it touches on the people that are flying the flag. So those are the initiatives. And again, being recognized for doing a great work is one of the things that we do at Brand South Africa. And we keep these things so that when we are asked, where is your impact? We are able to do and show and tell. And these things are independent and they're not even done by Brand South Africa. We also, during this administration, we had a Play Your Part Awards, which is to celebrate all the South Africans doing great things, and the Nation Brand Forum, which is very important in mobilizing South African government as well as private sector. So really on the impact measures, I won't go into it, Chairperson, in the interest of time, but it's important that the honorable members understand that we are not a commercial brand. So you can't say I've sold 10 cans of Coke, but we play in the space of emotions and reputation. And as such, we use indicators such as the tone, the sentiments, the AVE, and that's what you will see here. And knowing as well that these are the pride. The pride is good in South Africa. 2020, when the administration started, 68 as an example. Now it's at 70.6. And we go further to dissect, even with the hexagon that I spoke about, very imperative. Exports, our success right now, we spoke about Saudi Arabia's almost multi-billion investment. That's just one story that is continuing because we are profiling why invest in South Africa. Our people, an article by the Times, for instance, in Australia was saying South Africans are coming back home. That's the news that we want to actually hear and want to promote. It's purely because of the things that we do. It's not only in the African governance as well. We also look at the governance as a whole. We look at things such as innovation, because that's what we are shifting now, to be moved from a country that is synonymous with mining to move towards the new things, the new story. And those are the indicators that we use. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you, Acting CEO. Members, it's that time for us to engage on the presentation. Can I identify hands, members?
Mutapo.
Mutapo.
Tobias.
Tobias and Yabo. In that order.
Thank you, Honorable Chairperson, honorable colleagues, Honorable Deputy Minister and Acting CEO. Let me start by thanking you, Shaviseki Mutau, so much for the opening remarks. They painted a very positive and promising picture of us as a country. There is this narrative, Honorable DM, and perception of painting our country as a West country, as a corrupt-ridden country. The same dooms of failure forget to state that there are capable institutions like Chapter 9 institutions and very capable law enforcement agencies to deal with such. So what you presented today is really commendable, Honorable Deputy Minister, a true reflection of what South Africa.
Unmute yourself, Honorable Mutapo. You are muted. Mutapo, unmute yourself. Technology is dealing with Honorable Mutapo while she'll be coming back and realizing that she's no longer on the platform. Can we take Honorable Tobias?
Chair, good morning to your good self and the colleagues and officials that are present today. Deputy Minister, thank you for your presentation. Your presentation brings light and hope because Finally, a board will be in place, albeit after a very long time that left the organization limping. So finally, a decision has been taken to establish a board, which is good. Any organization without its leadership will always face challenges. I won't say much about the performance of Brand South Africa in the past because it will sound like I'm patting myself on the shoulder, having been at the helm of the organization when it's performed so well. But here's an issue which is very important. We have been having an acting CEO for the longest of time. And hopefully when the board comes in, we expect the board to expeditiously appoint those executives that will make the organization to function properly. But here's the question: when are you going to recognize this institution as an institution that needs a better budget for it to market the country? I know there's an opinion that says it must go and get funds from other sources, but in terms of the scheduling of this institution, it is funded by National Treasury. This matter needs attention. It needs speedy solution as to when will you give more money for Brand South Africa for it to do its tasks. Thirdly, the location. You might want to pay attention to the location of Brand South Africa, whether it should account to GCIS, which I don't believe it's the best methodology or a modeling of an institution of this nature, with its kind of influence it needs to have in society. You might want to also look at that. And as I end, Chair, there are prophets of doom who believes that Brand South Africa has not done enough. But in my considered opinion, this organization works very hard with a very limited workforce, and it needs the support it deserves, and also to protect its narrative. GCIS must play a part to help them to project it in the most positive of terms in society. Can I take a break there, Chair? Thank you very much.
Honorable Yabo, you may follow.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair. Let me once more acknowledge the presence of the Deputy Minister on the platform, her support team. Let me also acknowledge the presence of the acting CEO and welcome the presentation she has made to us, and also acknowledge the presence of her team on the platform and all honorable members on the platform. Now, Chair, one of the things that stand out for me with the presentation is the hexagon model. I would want to know whether in the day-to-day implementation or tracking of this hexagon, whether part of the work includes looking or watching out for rating agency impact on Brand South Africa. Or rather, let me rephrase the question as follows. What is the impact of rating agencies on Brand South Africa? And what is the interface role between Brand South Africa as an entity and those rating agencies? Is there any role that they play at that level? Considering that if we are rated junk status, it means the object of the work of Brand SA is impacted negatively in relation to getting the share of pocket, the global share of pocket. Perhaps in the same vein, we should start a conversation around reorganizing or reclassifying Brand SA in terms of its its legal framework, or the legal framework that gives life to it. Maybe we need to change the type of entity it is classified as or registered as, or how it's animated. Perhaps we should look at taking a different form altogether. But I raise this because if Brand SA, part of its work or a big chunk of its work relates to putting South Africa in good light internationally, and then you have a blind spot, such as an area where rating agencies function and operate, and they do not have a mandate to interface at that level, then it means I want to use that vernacular term, because they could have painted a good picture, a good story for South Africa, and the following morning rating agency says, but no, South Africa is not a good investment destination. We are now downgrading it. And of course, the instruments that lead to that are quite complex, but I'm just saying, maybe place Brand South Africa at the level where they can engage with these rating agencies at their level. But also, I'm pleased that the work of Brand SA is coming along quite nicely, and this is happening notwithstanding the challenges of governance. By challenges, I mean the absence of a board, and now that we are getting to a point where the board is awaiting registration with the Master of High Court, they would have done well despite that handicap. And we hope that the presence of a board will only enhance what we have already been seeing, and that it will not take us backwards or put us in a place where we are retrogressing. We hope that it becomes a positive thing for us as Brand SA. Now, lastly, Chair, the question around financial resources and Brand SA being resourced, I think it has been spoken of a lot. And I want to concur with members who've spoken on it that it needs to be looked at quite favorably. The amount of money that is given to the entity is not satisfactory, especially with the mandate that they are driving. And they literally live off a shoestring budget. And they've been surviving on a shoestring budget for quite a while. And I think it's important because the function of being an attractive destination and that narrative being carried internationally for us to secure share of pocket means that you are increasing foreign direct investment to the country. So you cannot put a minuscule number to an entity that is responsible for ensuring that we have a greater inflow of financial foreign direct investment. I would advise that National Treasury needs to look at the amount of money it allocates to an entity such as Brand SA, with all the competing interests, of course, taken into consideration. But there needs to be an increase in the resources allocated to Brand SA. Thank you very much, Chair, for the opportunity.
Thank you, Honorable Yabo. I'll then call Honorable Pillay, as we agree with you that it would form part of our legacy report. I believe that Ms. Moy will be writing that as our legacy report, as much as we'll be advocating for Brand SA to get more funds as one of the major challenges that they are facing. Pillay, can you come in?
Thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson. Chair, let me first welcome the presentation and appreciate all of the efforts that are being made by Brand South Africa. I also want to join other honorable members in respect of lobbying for funding in terms of budgets that is going to be able to enhance the work that they're doing. Chair, mine is just to ask in respect of firstly, critical vacancies that may exist within Brand SA. 2, what is the vacancy rate? And if you recall clearly, the last time Brand SA presented to us, we did say that we hope by the next time they come here, the CEO position would be a permanent one and not an acting CEO. I just want to know the status of that. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Pile. Khoshikgadi Mothapo, are you still there?
No, thank you, Chair. Let me start by apologizing. I think my colleagues have covered me. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you. Dear, you can start responding. I see both of you are still here with Morolo. There's no transmesh. If he can still assist you, you are working together. I'm aware of that. One thing that it's of paramount to us is that we are tired of acting. We are not advocating for anyone, but we are saying, do your part. Let's have a proper accounting person, not a person who will be always be acting and, you know, it sometimes does not sit well with us. Actually, it does not sit well with us. So I'm giving you a chance, both DMs, if you have something to say, or one will come in, it's fine. Then later we'll be requesting the acting to respond to questions that were raised by members. DM Mutau.
Thank you, Chair, for the opportunity again. Chair, we appreciate the support and the guidance that has been provided by the Portfolio Committee. I must further emphasize that the entity might have not performed to its 100% ability to various reasons, some which were beyond our control, such as the high rate in the executive management due to the challenges of the board. But in addressing the vacancy rate, is it worth it noting that the Executive Authority approved the recruitment of vacancies in the Brand SA in 2023? It's been approved, and the recruitment is underway for all vacancies. The only vacancies that are still outstanding is the executive one, which will be attended to by the board, envisaged to be operational in March, as the board is required to participate in the executive interviews. We are still committed to reach our target of no more than 10% by the end of the financial year 2024 and the 2025. Chair, we are also intended to strengthen our Play Your Part initiatives to ensure that we have patriotic South Africans who are part of building and branding our country. To Honorable Mothapo, we appreciate the positive feedback, and we further commit to the committee that we will leave no stone unattended to improve the image and the credibility of our country. To Honorable Tobias, like I have indicated earlier, we will prioritize the filling of the executive management post. And then on the issue that we have raised on, or especially on the budget, and the reporting lines are also noted. And I believe that we must also prioritize in making Brand SA a credible institution. Chair, with your permission, may I request the acting CEO to deal with the remaining questions? Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Chairperson. Thank you, DM, as you have addressed the questions from Honorable Tobias and Honorable Pillay. So I'll respond to Honorable Yabo's comments and the question. The hexagon model, you know, is one impactful model that many scholars have done a lot of work and research on, and it seems to be the winning framework currently, hence most countries do so. So the question of the impact of the rating agencies on the nation brand, not only for me is a thesis on its own, but I can tell you what we have been doing as Brand South Africa in as far as addressing whenever there's a downgrade. So there's an announcement, we are on junk status, we do a mitigation plan, we do a roundtable, we call it somebody from National Treasury, somebody from business, and somebody from civil society, as well as media, where we do a roundtable to counter that negativity and profile some of the new things, the interventions that are currently being done. That is why in that positioning presentation we did at the last portfolio committee, we had that slide that spoke to disablers and the interventions. So our ongoing job is to manage the reputation of the country from that perspective. So is there a correlation between the two? The papers, the journal articles I've read have not indicated so. The investment studies that we follow, including the Bloom study, that looks at the perceptions of investors and look at why investors, invest in certain countries. The three main issues that come or that drive investors is the political stability, the absence of geopolitics, and it's the openness of the market, which then speaks to other dimensions such as the ease of doing business. So I would safely say for now, we have not have empirical data to say the two does touch on a nation brand long term. I think on the short term, it does sway and influence negatively the tone in terms of the messaging and the talkability of South Africa during that particular period. And then it quickly moves away because it's not a factor that is, I would say, substantially strong to actually, last or to have a sustainable impact. But notwithstanding the need, though, to integrate Brand South Africa and elevate its stature so that when all stakeholders in the government sector speaks of reputation management, they understand exactly that Brand South Africa must come in and must come in right early, not at the tail end. So our challenge has been getting the right people, getting access even to the right structures of meetings where we need to have a voice and show how we can do our part to mitigate the risk of denting the nation brand. And I think that is being addressed because currently Brand South Africa chairs, for instance, in a joint sitting of business and government, we chair what you call a steering committee on communications. So at least there we've been recognized for our capabilities and our voice and our impact. The Minister of Finance has asked us as well to work very closely with DECO to push the agenda of G20 because South Africa's chairship begins in January. So we need to do more to elevate, Honorable Yabo, our stature and our presence. I think when we do that, that's going to be our winning formula amongst the other giants that we are fighting for in as far as the wallet of investors are concerned. So that answers that question. The financial resources, I think that was a comment that is being shared, and all the other questions that DM has really touched on. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you, Acting CEO. Members, we have came to the end of our meeting today, and I want to take this opportunity and appreciate all the delegation that is brought by the ministry and yourselves as members to be with us. I know today we are double dipping, and I want to urge that you go back and participate to your mini plenaries. We have mini plenary 1 that will want to urge all members to join in support of Honorable Pillay, who will be debating there in the next 15 minutes or so. Members and our deployees who are here, I want to say the meeting stand adjourned until we meet again. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair.